Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 299th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about managing your emotions at work with really challenging political situations. Don't forget the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 6 years worth of episodes to listen to. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at the downloads link on my website, which is diverseminds.co.uk/downloads. So this episode is thanks to Rael Al-Mashgari, who helps me with my social media. We were talking about the relentless and painful news stories, and this week has been particularly intense. And given that context, how can you manage emotions at work? We live in an intense period of time. Headlines include the right-wing narratives and violence that's going on in the UK and in the rest of the world, cost of living crisis, climate chaos, genocide, terrorism, wars, natural disasters, pandemics, and huge political uncertainty. And of course, we can access these stories 24/7 on TV, news websites, radio, social media, etc. And for so many of us, these topics aren't just headlines, they impact our daily lives. A big part of our daily life is also going to work, so we can't always talk about these topics openly in the workplace, and they may not be safe for us to discuss for a variety of reasons. And of course, the workplace is not a vacuum, and supporting staff who feel in distress and understanding how to support staff who are impacted by what's going on locally, nationally, and internationally is vital. But this doesn't often happen. And do check out my episode series on politics in the workplace. But being continually exposed to the news can cause a sense of overwhelm, taking a toll on our mental health and leaving us feeling emotionally drained, anxious, helpless, guilty, and scared. But the good news is that there are things that we can do to think about managing our emotions. Now, I would love to say that I wish we didn't have to manage our emotions. I wish we could be open. I wish we could get support. I wish it didn't have to be like this. But given that the current circumstances with the news and everything else can have huge impacts. So like with stress, we can have the physical impacts, the aches and pains, digestive problems, sleep issues, irritability, trouble concentrating, difficulty making decisions, low motivation, memory problems, constant worrying, feeling really discombobulated, sadness, despair, feeling stuck, numbness, and chronic stress. This is the thing, as I always say, it's the first rung on the ladder to potentially developing mental ill health, which is why it's really important to be aware if you are noticing signs or you need to listen to your body, because of course it's natural to have human reactions to an increasingly destabilized world and VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous workplace. Well, world really in general. And if you'd like to know more about stress, I've included the link in the show notes to my website. Don't forget the Address Your Stress 10-step download. I've got my podcast on stress, money and mental health, for example, the stress of patriarchy at work, my deep dive blog post about what makes stress so alluring, and many other resources. So do check them out if you want to know more about that. So I hope you're enjoying the content of today's show and want to keep up to date. If you are, then why not join my bi-monthly newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you can now choose the download you would like. So just go to diverseminds.co.uk/downloads and choose the resource that works best for you. Okay, so what can we actually do about managing our emotions in terms of politics? Because actually talking about politics at work can feel psychologically dangerous, particularly for global majority, disabled, LGBTQI+, women, employees, because it frequently exposes people who are underrepresented or who have been harmed by what's going on to any kind of bias, professional penalties, and hostile environments. They can turn very personal, and people's lived experiences can be turned into a debate, ignored, ridiculed, and can be a trigger for discrimination. The penalty for anyone who may be from an underrepresented group speaking openly about political inequality can be labeled as troublemaking, agitator, oh, you keep going on, which can negatively affect their chances, your chances, our chances, their chances for career promotions, progression, or to be seen in a fair and just way. There is also a huge fear of retaliation and, of course, victimization when people speak up. So managing emotions in the workplace where politics is involved, I would argue human rights discussions really, unfortunately, does require proactive strategies to protect our mental health and also career opportunities, and to not have a mark against our name. And I feel really sad saying this because it shouldn't be like that. So, first of all, decide if and when you want to discuss these things in the workplace, and you may not want to, but it can be very tricky because we may hear something in the kitchen, or if we're working on a factory floor or site, it is very difficult. We can't always opt out or step aside because we have to carry on with the job at hand. And it is really difficult when someone says something factually incorrect and you know it's not true, in a very rude, adamant way, and thinks they know best. Misogynistic. I mean, I haven't personally heard anything, but of course, I freelance and I work for myself, and the spaces I go into, people generally tend to either not talk about it or agree with my perspectives. So we can't always walk away or excuse ourselves. And when we hear something that is very against what we believe, is discriminatory, is nasty, is rude, is misogynistic, it's very painful to acknowledge this, but you might have to do that and decide how you want to manage it. That could be the first steps. And it might be that you don't challenge that person. You want to take a step back and think about how you want to take it forward. And often that shock is huge, and thinking, I really wish I'd said something. But often it's not always safe to do that. But that doesn't mean we don't have a choice about how we want to address it. The second thing is we will often, if particularly we're from underrepresented groups, and I'm thinking more in terms of cultural diversity, is this idea of code switching. And we might have to really carefully manage how we present our feelings and values in the open. Switching on ways of being, it may be necessary to dial up the professionalism to create some distance. And where possible, focus on any facts and, of course, say it as calmly as possible, and then decide when you want to stop. Because we can present people with all the facts in the world, but if people have a visceral connection to something, they will just ignore it. And of course, if it's exhausting you, the person managing it all, there has to come a point where you decide where you want to draw that line. There are also techniques to manage the immediate emotional reaction that we might be having. And it's not wrong to have the reactions. It's just that we don't necessarily want to react and then for people to turn on us and say, oh, they shouted, they did this, and become the victim. So for this, it might be really helpful to use the 5 senses technique, which is to take a deep breath and then think about 5 things you can see. Look around and identify 5 things you can see. So that could be a chair, it could be the clock on the wall, it could be a coffee mug, it could be, anything around you. Then 4 things you can touch. So really trying to connect with what's around you. So the chair underneath you, it could be moving your foot on the floor. Just, of course, you're not going to necessarily feel what's on the floor, but feeling the fabric of your clothes, holding, feeling the texture of the pen in your hand. Then 3 things you can hear. So aside from the conversation that might be going on, is it traffic outside? Is it your breath? Is it a clock ticking? Is it a kettle boiling in the background? 2 things you can smell. So identify any scents around you. That can be quite difficult, but it could also be, you could just, there might be a scent on your clothes that you like. It might be something around you. And then 1 thing you can taste. Now, this is kind of difficult unless you've just got something right in your mouth, but you might be something that you've had recently, or think about a taste that you've had recently, a cup of tea, a biscuit, whatever that is. So that just grounds and really puts us in the present. And it gives us time to digest how we want to respond and react. Okay. And then it might be worth being direct and polite and changing the topic. So if a conversation makes you feel uncomfortable, we can try and state our preference. So using positive, assertive I statements. I prefer not to discuss this topic at work. I'd really like to focus on the agenda. Or I'd really like to talk about the projects that we need to do. Or you could also have a gentle pivot into a different topic. Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot going on right now, isn't there? But actually, we really need to talk about the new project guidelines. So that could be another way of doing that. And the 5th thing is that you would probably need to find different spaces outside the workplace, or find spaces or pockets in the workplace that will support you. So make sure you know where your allies are internally and externally. And if you have staff networks that you're part of and you know and trust, do access them. It's not always possible, but make sure you are able to debrief with people you can trust, and they won't gaslight you and say you're overreacting, because of course the feelings you're having are absolutely understandable and you are entitled to your feelings, but it's how you might want to then manage that and take them forward. Which takes me to the 6th point, which is about documenting what's happened and what's been going on. So if political discussions go too far, people are being laughed at, bullied, discriminated against, do document the incident, including the time, date, and people involved to protect yourself and to be a witness for others potentially. So if your workplace has anonymous reporting, it's probably worth filing this information so it's on record. Report and support is often a system that organizations use. If there's someone more senior who you think will take it seriously, you can delegate it. So there are things that you can do. I don't think there's any workplace that has done this particularly well. If you are listening to this and think that your workplace is brilliant at it, please do get in touch with me. But remember that actually we do have to manage our emotions at work for our own well-being, particularly with the things and topics that are going on. They mean something to us deeply, and but it doesn't mean, unfortunately, the workplace isn't always the best place to talk about them or get the support that we need. However, of course, if there are incidents that are untoward, distressing, and causing discrimination, that there are ways in which you can document it and report it and delegate it upwards. And don't forget to make sure you have those allies and people you know, like, and trust who can hold space for you. So I'd love to hear from you if you feel that your workplace is doing well or how you manage emotions around these topics at work. And don't forget that I run workshops, training sessions, and keynotes for organizations about creating positive, happy, and equal workplaces. Please get in touch with me to find out more about how I could help you at Layla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. I really hope you've enjoyed the show today and over the last 6 years. So if you have, leave me a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast from. Don't forget my TEDx talk about the connection between culture, race, and mental health. And again, that can be a really tricky conversation, so there's some tips in there. It's just something you can watch in your break as it's 12 minutes long, and that link is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves WOLVESLO. And the resources are the stress awareness resources, so do check those out. And I really look forward to you joining me on the next show, where we'll be talking more about mental health and inclusion. Until then, take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.